Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly mind-bending philosophical thought experiment. We're going to navigate the vast, honestly kind of incomprehensible distance between the microscopic world of a tiny insect and the ultimate destiny of human consciousness. To put that scale into perspective, think about this. There are more connections in the human brain than there are literally stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Yet the universe also perfectly balances the biology of a little beetle that's smaller than a grain of sand. It's this brilliant exercise in scale and proportion, connecting the absolute smallest, seemingly insignificant details of our world straight to the largest, most existential questions humanity has ever asked. So let's get right into the framework.
I want you to quiet your mind for just a second. Imagine the incredibly delicate chirp of a small bird hidden deep in the branches of a thick forest, or the finest, almost imperceptible rustle of a tiny insect navigating a single blade of grass. Think about the crazy complex biological needs of that tiny bug. It needs the exact right temperature, perfectly calibrated atmospheric pressure, and super specific nutrients just to survive for a few fleeting days. And there is a level of sensitivity in the natural order that actively notices, sustains, and caters to those incredibly tiny, fleeting moments and needs with flawless precision. Now let's scale that up. Would a system, a whole universe, that meticulously cares for such impossibly tiny details completely ignore our human desire for a meaningful eternal life? Like, would it go to such great lengths to cater to the bug, but just totally ignore humanity's deepest, most fundamental plea?
That massive question is actually the foundation of the writing we're exploring today. Specifically, we're looking at the conclusion of a philosophical chapter known as The Third Truth, which comes from a broader work called The 10th Word. Now, it's really important to frame exactly how we're approaching this material. We aren't looking at this simply as a statement of religious dogma. Not at all. Rather, it's a rigorous, step-by-step piece of logical deduction. The original author is basically laying out a profound philosophical argument based purely on observation. We're being asked to look at the mechanics of the world functioning around us, identify the underlying rules of that system, and then follow those rules to their natural, undeniable endpoint, without jumping to any wild conclusions.
Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer scale of the rhetorical question being presented. Listen to this quote. Is it possible that a justice and wisdom rushing to the aid of the smallest creature's smallest need would leave unanswered the greatest creature's greatest need, the desire for permanence? I mean, let that sink in. Think about the massive contrast being set up between the micro creature and macro humanity. On one side of the scale, you have the absolute smallest organism getting its most minuscule biological need perfectly met by this vast, complex ecosystem. And on the other side, you have humanity. We're the most complex creature we know of, possessing an incredible depth of consciousness, literally pleading for our greatest need: permanence, eternity, and enduring meaning. The logic strongly dictates that a system cannot be perfectly wise and attentive at the very bottom, yet entirely oblivious and careless at the top.
But naturally, here is where we hit the logical gap that the original author vividly identifies. If this governing system of the universe is so perfect and meticulously attentive, why does our greatest plea for permanence remain seemingly unanswered right now? Well, the argument explains that this apparent gap is really just an illusion caused by the limitations of our current environment. In this incredibly short, fleeting, worldly life, humanity simply cannot see the full reward or consequence of such perfect universal justice. A human lifespan's what, maybe 8 or 9 decades. That's a mere blink in cosmic time. True universal justice, the kind of justice that rewards ultimate good, accounts for ultimate wrongs, and satisfies an infinite desire for meaning, it simply cannot squeeze into such a fleeting, temporary window. Because the world is so incredibly brief, the final answer naturally appears hidden from our immediate view.
So, the crucial point is how the author mathematically balances this cosmic equation. Since perfect justice and our absolute deepest desires aren't fully realized in this brief, constrained world, the logic naturally demands that the final verdict isn't canceled, it's just deferred. It's pushed out to a much larger, all-encompassing system. The writer refers to this expansive realm as the Great Court. And this isn't just some mystical idea or wishful thinking, by the way. In the strict context of this argument, it's a logically required hereafter system. It is the necessary expanded space required to fully address the unmet justice and the immense, infinite desires of humanity that are quite literally too large to be fulfilled here on Earth. Just as a small seed needs a vast field to grow into a towering tree, human potential and desire require a realm far larger than our mortal lifespan to be fully realized.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core philosophical principle at the heart of this whole exploration: proportional reasoning.
Think about the microscale for a second. We observe meticulous, awe-inspiring care for birds, bugs, and immediate biological needs every single day in nature. It's undeniable, and it happens billions of times a second without fail. Now, compare that to the macro scale, humanity's grand existence, our profound desire for eternity, and the logical necessity of that great court we just discussed. The argument here is fundamentally about consistency in the universe's behavior. It would be entirely inconsistent, frankly even absurd, for a governing system to be flawlessly careful, delicate, and precise when dealing with a microscopic ant, but completely chaotic, careless, and indifferent when dealing with the absolute pinnacle of biological complexity, which is human consciousness. Perfection in the micro implies and essentially guarantees perfection in the macro.
When we put all these pieces together, it builds into a formal, undeniable sequence. We can break this overarching argument down into a rock-solid three-step syllogism. Step 1. Meticulous care is proven on the microscale. The universe flawlessly sustains the insect. That is a verifiable, observable fact of our reality. Step 2. Careless behavior on the macro scale would therefore be a profound logical inconsistency. Think about a master watchmaker. A watchmaker doesn't spend countless hours perfectly crafting and balancing the tiny, microscopic internal gears of a timepiece just to take a hammer and recklessly smash the watch face into a million pieces, right? The care implies a larger purpose. Therefore, step 3, the care shown to the tiniest details must reflect as a universal, unbroken principle that applies to the whole. If the foundational rule of the universe is that needs are met, then humanity's greatest, most profound need, the desire to exist permanently, must also logically be met.
Now, to solidify this philosophical confidence, the original writing brings in theological backing to securely anchor the logic. It cites this verse from the Qur'an, Surah An-Nam. Who is it that answers the distressed when they call out to him and removes their suffering? What's truly fascinating to observe as we unpack this explainer is how perfectly this ancient theological text aligns with the strict logical deduction we've just mapped out together. The argument uses this quote impartially as a profound capstone. It demonstrates that the ancient theological perspective beautifully mirrors the philosophical realization we arrived at, that a conscious, meticulous system that hears and answers the distress of the absolute smallest creature is exactly the same system required to hear and ultimately answer the profound distress and longing of humanity.
So, bringing all this sweeping cosmic theory back down to Earth, I want to leave you with a final, highly personal thought. How does feeling noticed in a small moment of your own life relate to hoping for a solution to massive existential problems? Just think about a specific time when a tiny, highly particular detail just felt perfectly into place for you. A moment where you felt against all conceivable odds, truly seen and understood. The strict logic we've explored today suggests those beautiful micro-moments aren't just random, meaningless accidents of physics. They're the exact same meticulous care that perfectly feeds the insect, operating right there in your daily life. And if that system can see and manage the tiny, intimate details of your day, what does that logically tell you about its ultimate ability to handle your biggest, most massive existential fears? It's quite a breathtaking scale to weigh your life on, isn't it?